Listen to that. Just for a second. Close your eyes. That's not the throaty, guttural roar of a Spitfire. It's not the industrial snarl of a Messerschmitt 109. That is the sound of a whisper. A ghost in the sky. And for the most confident, deadly, and arrogant fighter pilots the world had ever known, the men of the German Luftwaffe, it was the sound of their own mortality. Imagine this. You're a German ace. An expert. You have 50, 60, maybe 100 kills painted on your cockpit. You've been taught, you believe, that your engineering is supreme. Your machine is a testament to Teutonic genius. And then you see it. A sleek, impossibly fast shape, dancing at the very edge of your vision, 5 miles above the Earth. You push your throttle to the firewall, your engine screaming, and yet, it doesn't get any closer. It just taunts you. And then in a flash, it's gone. This is the story of an airplane that shouldn't have worked. A plane made of wood, glue, and canvas. A plane the Luftwaffe High Command laughed at, dismissing it as a pathetic, desperate ploy by a nation on the ropes. They called it a joke. They nicknamed it, well, we'll get to that. But this wooden wonder, the de Havilland Mosquito, didn't just prove them wrong. It became a phantom of terror, a multi-role predator so effective, so untouchable, that seasoned German pilots would look at their controllers, their voices cracking with a fear they hadn't felt since they were rookies, and they would simply refuse to fly against it. Welcome to one of the greatest stories of technological hubris and sheer, unadulterated guts of the Second World War. A story where the underdog, armed with ingenuity and a literal wooden plane, achieved the unthinkable. This is why Luftwaffe aces refused to fly against the wooden wonder Mosquito. Strap in. To understand the sheer, seismic shock of the Mosquito, we have to first step into the mindset of 1940s Germany. Picture it. The Blitzkrieg. A continent conquered in a matter of months. The Luftwaffe isn't just a military branch. It's a symbol of national pride, of Aryan superiority. Their pilots are rock stars. Men like Adolf Galland with his cigar and his customized cockpit are household names. Their machines, the Messerschmitt Bf 109, the Focke-Wulf FW 190, are masterpieces of metal and firepower. They are built for one thing: killing. They are heavy, they are brutal, and they believe they are the best in the world. And across the channel, Britain is bleeding. The Battle of Britain has been won, but just barely. The factories are struggling. Aluminum is in short supply. Strategic materials are being sunk by U-boats in the Atlantic. The situation is, by any rational measure, desperate. And in this cauldron of desperation, a man named Sir Geoffrey de Havilland, a visionary aircraft designer, walks into the Air Ministry with a truly insane idea. He doesn't want to build a plane out of scarce metal. He wants to build it out of wood. Like a piece of furniture. He proposes a light bomber, unarmed, that will rely solely on its speed to outrun enemy fighters. The men in the room must have thought he'd lost his mind. You can almost hear the skeptical silence, the clearing of throats. An unarmed bomber? In a sky dominated by the 109? It was tantamount to suicide. One official reportedly called it, and I quote, de Havilland's folly. They saw it as a relic, a throwback to the biplanes of the last war, not the future of aerial combat. But de Havilland was a stubborn man. He saw what others couldn't. He saw that by stripping away the weight of gun turrets, of heavy defensive armaments, of bulky armor plate, he could create something pure. A scalpel, not a sledgehammer. He envisioned an airframe so clean, so aerodynamically perfect, that the immense power of two of the greatest engines ever built, the Rolls-Royce Merlins, would propel it faster than anything the enemy could put in the air. It was a bet. A huge, multi-million-pound gamble on a single radical idea. That speed alone could be the ultimate defense. So, they started building it. And not in some giant, sprawling factory, but in secret locations, sometimes in old furniture factories. The fuselage wasn't molded metal. It was a beautifully crafted, layered shell of balsa wood sandwiched between sheets of birch plywood. It was glued and screwed together by craftsmen, carpenters, cabinet makers, and woodworkers who had never built a warplane before. The wings were a complex, single wooden spar. The whole thing was a masterpiece of woodworking. The workers called it the termite's dream. The Luftwaffe intelligence, if they heard about it at all, would have scoffed. A wooden plane? It sounded like a death trap. They gave it a mocking nickname, a name that would come to haunt them, die Mosquito plague. The Mosquito plague, a minor, irritating pest. Little did they know, this pest carried a deadly sting. The first Mosquito, serial number W4050, took to the air on November 25, 1940. The test pilot, Jeffrey de Havilland Jr., the designer's own son, was at the controls. He expected, well, he didn't know what to expect. A lumbering, awkward thing? But as he lifted off the runway, he felt it immediately. The controls were light, responsive. The airframe felt alive. He pushed the throttles forward and the two Merlins responded with a symphony of power. He landed, a grin plastered across his face, and reportedly said, "We've got a winner." This wasn't just a plane, it was a revelation. But the true test wasn't in the hands of a master test pilot. It was in the hands of young men like Flying Officer John "Cat's Eyes" Cunningham. Now, Cunningham was already a legend as a night fighter pilot, but when he was assigned to the 1st Mosquito Night Fighter Squadron, even he was skeptical. He climbed into the cockpit for the first time. It was different, smaller, more intimate. The smell wasn't of oil and metal, but of glue and wood. It felt less like a machine of war and more like a finely tuned instrument. He took off on a training flight, and as he climbed, he decided to see what this wooden wonder could really do. He points the nose down into a dive. The airspeed indicator begins to climb. 400 m, 450. The airframe starts to vibrate, a low hum building into a shudder. In a metal plane, this is the point where you pull out, fearing the wings might simply tear off. But the Mosquito holds. It's singing. 480 miles per hour. The world outside is a blur. Cunningham feels a mix of terror and exhilaration. He pulls back on the stick, the G-forces pressing him into his seat. The plane responds without a complaint. He lands, his hands slightly trembling, and he knows. He knows they have something that changes everything. The Mosquito wasn't just fast, it was slippery. It cut through the air with an efficiency that left its metal contemporaries gasping in its wake. And then, the Mosquito went to war. Its first missions were high-altitude photo reconnaissance. Unarmed, alone, flying deep into the heart of Nazi-occupied Europe. The first time a German radar operator picked up a lone blip streaking across his screen at an impossible speed and altitude, he must have thought his equipment was faulty. Then they started seeing it. A slim, twin-tailed phantom, glinting in the high-altitude sun. The alarm would sound. Achtung! J-bows! Scramble! Scramble! We can put ourselves in the leather-flying boots of Lieutenant Klaus Bauer, a young but promising pilot of JG-26, the Abbeville Boys. He's sitting in his FW-190, a beast of a machine, its BMW radial engine rumbling with latent power. The controller's voice is tense in his headphones. Fast-moving reconnaissance aircraft, heading east, Angels 30. 30,000 feet. Bauer and his swarm of 4 190s claw for altitude, their engines gulping the thin air. It takes them precious, agonizing minutes to get up there. And then he spots it. A tiny, dark cross, miles ahead, trailing 2 faint contrails. Contact. 11 o'clock high. He pushes the 190 into a shallow climb, the engine roaring. He checks his gauges. He's near his maximum speed. But the Mosquito, it isn't getting any closer. It's just staying there. A tantalizing, unreachable target. He can almost imagine the British pilot, coolly glancing over his shoulder, maybe even giving a little wave. Bauer fires a hopeful long-range burst from his cannons. The shells explode harmlessly, miles behind the Mosquito. And then, as if insulted by the very attempt, the Mosquito seems to lean forward. And it just vanishes. It shrinks to a dot and is gone. Bauer is left alone in the vast, silent sky, his fuel running low, his confidence shattered. What kind of sorcery was this? How could a bomber, a reconnaissance plane, outrun a Focke-Wulf? This scene played out again and again over France, over the Low Countries, over Germany itself. The Mosquito was untouchable. It flew so high and so fast that the standard German intercept tactics were useless. It was a ghost, taking pictures of their most secret installations, the V1 launch sites, the U-boat pens, the factories, and laughing all the way back to England. The laughter in the German high command began to die down. The irritation was turning into something else, a deep, gnawing frustration. This Mosquito plague was becoming a full-blown epidemic. But photo reconnaissance was just the beginning. That was the Mosquito proving it could survive. Now it was time to prove it could kill. The bomber variants were rolling off the production lines, and with them came a new, terrifying tactic, the low-level, high-speed daylight raid. Imagine this, a formation of mosquitoes skimming the treetops at over 300 miles per hour, so low they're kicking up leaves, their merlins screaming in unison, a sound that arrives a split second before the bombs do. And the ultimate test of this new, brutal style of war was coming. A target so audacious, so heavily defended, so deep in enemy territory, that to attack it in daylight was considered a suicide mission. A target that would cement the Mosquito's legend and plant the first seeds of genuine fear in the hearts of the experten. The target? The very heart of the Nazi beast. Berlin itself. The date is January 30th, 1943. A day that would go down in history. The Mosquitoes are coming. And this time, they're not just taking pictures. The question is, when they reach the capital of the Third Reich, what will the Luftwaffe do? Will the aces finally get their chance for revenge? Or will the wooden wonder, this phantom, this pest, deliver a sting so shocking it would change the rules of the air war forever? The date is January 30th, 1943. In Berlin, the air is cold and heavy with political theater. It's the 10th anniversary of the Nazis' seizure of power. The bigwigs are all there, Göring, Goebbels, Himmler, gathered for a major propaganda rally. Joseph Goebbels himself is at the microphone, his voice screeching through the loudspeakers, whipping the crowd into a frenzy about the invincibility of the Third Reich, the might of the Luftwaffe, the futility of resisting the German will. The sky over the capital, he implies, is a sanctuary, a shielded space safe from the terror of aerial bombardment. It's a carefully staged display of power and security. And at that exact moment, 600 miles away, a different kind of will is fueling up. On a rain-swept runway in England, the crews of number 105 and number 139 squadrons are climbing into their Mosquito B.IVs. Their mission, handed down from the very top, ruined Goebbels' speech. It's not just a military target, it's a psychological one. A direct slap to the face of the Nazi propaganda machine. The plan is audacious to the point of insanity. A low-level, daylight raid on the most heavily defended city in Europe. Think about the guts that took. These aren't the massive, 1,000-bomber streams of the RAF's night campaign, cloaked in darkness. This is a handful of wooden planes, going in alone, in broad daylight. The pilots and navigators are a mix of seasoned veterans and fresh-faced kids, all knowing the odds are stacked terrifyingly against them. The briefing room was thick with tension. They knew the flak would be wall-to-wall. They knew the fighters would be swarming like hornets. They were flying into the lion's den and planning to tweak its tail. So they take off. The merlins howl and they form up, heading out over the North Sea, dropping so low that their propellers are almost kicking up spray from the whitecaps. They're on the deck, using the earth itself as cover, navigating by dead reckoning and sheer nerve. They cross the Dutch coast, still at 0 feet, weaving between church steeples, thundering over farms and fields, the shockwave of their passage rattling windows and scattering livestock. German radar, designed to look up, struggles to pick out these fast-moving blips from the ground clutter. The first line of defense has already been bypassed by sheer audacity. But as they push deeper into Germany, the alarm is raised. Reports come in of fast, low-flying aircraft. The Luftwaffe is scrambled. And this is where we meet our first expert who gets a rude awakening. Imagine Hauptmann Hans, S.C. Hahn, a legendary ace with nearly 70 kills to his name, commander of 3/JG2. He's vectored towards the incoming raiders. He expects to see a struggling, slow-moving formation of bombers, easy pickings. He descends through the clouds, his FW-190 hungry for a fight. What he sees instead defies all his experience. A streak of dark green and gray, moving at an impossible speed for its altitude. It's not lumbering. It's slashing across the landscape. He pushes his nose down, diving to intercept, but the Mosquito is already pulling away, a shrinking silhouette against the forest below. He pours on the power, the BMW engine screaming, but he can't close the distance. He's flying one of the finest fighter aircraft in the world, and he's being outrun by what he still thinks of as a bomber. The frustration is a physical thing, a hot knot in his stomach. He fires a long, futile burst from his cannons, the shells exploding harmlessly in the Mosquito's wake. It's like trying to shoot an arrow at a bullet. The Mosquitoes press on. The flak starts to come up now, a torrent of black puffs and fiery red shells. But flying this low is a nightmare for anti-aircraft gunners. The targets are there and gone in a heartbeat. The Mosquitoes weave and jink, the pilot's hands and feet making constant, tiny adjustments, their eyes scanning endlessly for threats. The noise inside the cockpit is a deafening orchestra, the roar of the engines, the scream of the wind, the thump-thump-thump of the flak, the nervous breathing over the intercom. Then, Berlin appears on the horizon. A smudge of smoke and city. They pull up slightly, just enough for the bomb run. The sky above the city is a solid wall of explosions. It's what the crews called the Berlin Welcome. Tracer fire stitches lazy, deadly patterns in the sky. And right on time, they spot the gathering, a massive crowd at the Sportpalast. They can almost feel the arrogance emanating from the place. Bomb doors open. The aircraft gets lighter, suddenly skittish. Bombs gone. And as the Mosquitoes bank away, diving back for the deck, their 4,000-pound payloads fall directly towards the heart of the Nazi celebration. They don't wait to see the impacts. They're already gone, pushing the throttles through the gate, the Merlins at war emergency power, racing for their lives. The bombs land right in the middle of the event. The explosions are not strategically massive, but their symbolic impact is earth-shattering. The speech is thrown into chaos. The myth of Berlin's invulnerability is shattered, live, in front of the entire Nazi leadership and the radio audience of the Reich. Goebbels is left sputtering, his face a mask of fury and humiliation. The rally, meant to showcase strength, has instead showcased a stunning vulnerability. Meanwhile, the Mosquitoes are running the gauntlet home. The Luftwaffe is enraged, throwing everything they have at them. But the same story plays out again and again. The Mosquitoes, now lighter without their bombs, are even faster. They outrun Messerschmitts. They outrun Focke-Wulfs. They duck into cloud banks, they skim lakes, they use their speed as both sword and shield. One by one, they make it back to the English coast, their fuel gauges hovering on empty, their airframes peppered with flak holes. But they make it. The mission is a monumental success. Not a single Mosquito is lost. Let that sink in. They flew into the belly of the beast, in daylight, spoiled the biggest party the Nazis were throwing, and came home without a scratch. The psychological victory was absolute. In Berlin, the mood turned from arrogance to cold, hard fear. If the British could do this with a handful of wooden planes, what else could they do? And for the Luftwaffe pilots, a new and unsettling thought began to take root. This wasn't a fluke. This wasn't luck. This was a machine, a wooden machine, that they seemingly could not touch. The mockery was over. The Mosquito plague had just become a full-blown crisis. But the Mosquito was only getting started. The High Command realized that this plane's potential was limitless. And so, they gave it a new, even deadlier role. A role that would transform it from a nuisance into a true hunter, a phantom that would stalk the night itself, preying not on cities, but on the very men sent up to stop it. The era of the night fighter had begun, and the Mosquito was about to become the most feared predator of the dark. The success over Berlin was a propaganda coup, a stinging humiliation for the Nazi regime. But for the men flying the Mosquito, it was just the beginning. The brass saw what this wooden wonder could do, and they had a new, even more sinister job for it. The war was shifting. The RAF's bomber command was pounding German cities by night, and the Luftwaffe had responded with a sophisticated and deadly night fighter force. These were not the cocky day fighter aces. These were hunters of the dark, guided by radar, slinking into the bomber streams to pick off Lancasters and Halifaxes one by one. Something had to be done to protect them. The Mosquito, with its speed, its agility, and its capacity to carry heavy new equipment, was the only answer. It was about to become the hunter of the hunters. This wasn't just about flying fast anymore. This was about a technological knife fight in the pitch-black sky. The Germans had their own system, the Nachtjagd. They used ground-controlled interception, vectored onto the bomber streams by controllers using the massive Würzburg radar. Their fighters, mostly twin-engine Junkers Ju-88s and Messerschmitt Bf 110s, were equipped with their own airborne radar sets, like the Liechtenstein. Imagine being a British bomber crew on a run to the Ruhr. It's colder than cold outside. The sky is a vast, black emptiness punctuated by flak bursts and the occasional fiery demise of a comrade. And you know they're out there. The German night fighters. You can't see them. You can only hear the desperate warnings over the radio. Fighter! Fighter! Corkscrew port! It was a war of electronic whispers and sudden, violent death. The Mosquito night fighter, designated the NF, Mk2 and later models, was built to enter this shadow war. It was fitted with the AI Mk4 air intercept radar. The navigator, now transformed into a radar operator, stared into a small, glowing green screen, looking for the distinct blip that meant an enemy aircraft was lurking in the darkness ahead. His job was to guide his pilot, using a calm, technical litany of instructions, onto the tail of the unsuspecting German. Contact, 10 degrees starboard, 2 miles, 1 mile, half a mile, he's right ahead of us now. I have him. Don't lose him. This changed the dynamic completely. The hunter became the hunted. We can picture Oberleutnant Karl Richter, a veteran Ju-88 night fighter pilot with 24 Abschuss, night kills, to his name. He's sitting in his glass-nosed cockpit, his own radar operator scanning the ether, looking for the slow, fat return of a Lancaster. He's confident, a master of his domain. He's just been vectored onto a target. He closes in, his finger on the trigger of his Schrage Musik, the upward-firing cannons that could eviscerate a bomber from below. He's seconds from another kill. And then his radio crackles. A warning from ground control, voice strained, Achtung! Mosquito, Mosquito trail. Break off. Break off. But it's too late. He never sees it. There's no warning roar of an engine, no tracers streaking past. Just a sudden, shattering explosion from behind and above as a storm of 20mm cannon shells from the Mosquito's belly rips his Ju-88 to pieces. The last thing Richter might have seen was a dark, twin-tailed shape, a fleeting shadow against the slightly lighter backdrop of the night sky, silently merging back into the darkness. It was a ghost kill. The psychological impact on the German night fighter crews was profound and immediate. Their safe haven, the night, had been violated. The fear was different now. It wasn't the fear of a lucky shot from a bomber's rear gunner. It was the fear of something smarter, faster, and utterly ruthless stalking you from the blackness. They started calling the Mosquito the Fliegens Teufel, the flying devil. Morale began to plummet. The stress of a mission, already immense, was now multiplied by a factor of 10. Every blip on their radar, every shadow, every whisper from ground control could be the devil coming for them. And the Mosquito crews, men like Wing Commander Brance Burbridge, one of the top Allied night fighter aces, became masters of this grim trade. Their stories are not of dramatic dogfights, but of patient, electronic hunts. Burbridge and his radar operator, Bill Skelton, were a perfectly synchronized team. Skelton's calm voice from the back would guide Burbridge through the inky void until the German aircraft would appear as a vague silhouette, barely visible against the ground or the stars. Then came the slow, careful approach, the gentle squeeze of the trigger, and the horrific, beautiful, terrifying bloom of orange flame as the enemy aircraft disintegrated. It was clinical. It was brutal. It was devastatingly effective. The Luftwaffe tried to respond. They developed faster night fighters like the Heinkel He 219 Uhu Thal, a formidable aircraft designed specifically to kill bombers. But it was also meant to deal with the Mosquito. And in a few rare encounters, it did. But the Mosquito's versatility was its greatest defense. It was constantly improved. Then if Mk-17 and 19 variants received the much more effective AI Mk-8 and later the American SE-720 radar, which gave them even greater range and resolution. They were always one step ahead. The ultimate testament to the Mosquito's dominance in the night sky was the effect it had on German strategy. The mere suspicion that Mosquitoes were in the area was enough to cause chaos. German ground controllers would often order their fighters to land rather than risk them being caught by the Wooden Wonder. Entire night fighter operations were scrubbed because of the Mosquito threat. They were no longer just losing planes. They were losing the initiative. The night was no longer theirs. But the Mosquito's bag of tricks was still not empty. Just when the Germans thought they had a handle on the night fighter threat, the Mosquito evolved again. It became something even more precise, more audacious. It became a scalpel for the most delicate and dangerous of surgeries. It was about to fly missions so low, so precise, that they would defy belief, striking not at cities or night fighters, but at the very walls of prisons and the heart of the German security apparatus. The Hunter was about to become a jailbreaker. The night fighter Mosquito had cowed the German defenses, turning their own protective darkness into a hunting ground. But the true genius of this aircraft was its chameleon-like ability to adapt, to take on a role no other plane could even attempt. As the war progressed, the need arose not for a sledgehammer, but for a scalpel. A tool for missions requiring such pinpoint accuracy and audacious low-level flying that they bordered on the suicidal. The Mosquito was about to become the star of what we'd now call special operations. This is where we move from the realm of aerial combat to the world of spies, jailbreaks, and psychological warfare. The Mosquito's new role was as a pathfinder and a precision strike aircraft. Its most famous, almost mythical missions were flown by the squadrons of the Light Night Striking Force and, most notably, No. 617 Squadron, the legendary Dambusters, who, after their famous raid, needed a new tool for their unique brand of precision mayhem. Imagine the scene. A Mosquito FB. Mark 6, the fighter-bomber variant. It's armed with 420mm Hispano cannons in the nose and 4.303 Browning machine guns, but its real weapon is the single 4,000-pound Cookie blast bomb, or sometimes even more precise ordnance. The target is not a city, not a factory complex, but the single building. A Gestapo headquarters. A prison holding resistance fighters. A vital command post. The planning for these raids was excruciatingly detailed. Pilots and navigators studied plaster models of the target and its surroundings for hours, memorizing every road, every tree, every distinctive rooftop. They practiced their approach and escape routes relentlessly. There was no room for error. They would be flying at wave-top height across the North Sea, then dropping to near-zero altitude over enemy territory, navigating by river bends and railway lines, their maps illuminated by a small hooded lamp in the cockpit. Let's take one of the most spectacular examples, the raid on the Amiens prison, Operation Jericho, on February 18, 1944. The French resistance had pleaded with the Allies. The Gestapo was holding hundreds of their members in the prison at Amiens, and executions were imminent. A mass breakout was the only hope. But how do you break down prison walls from the air without killing all the prisoners inside? The answer was the Mosquito. The plan was one of breathtaking precision and risk. A force of Mosquitoes, led by Group Captain Percy Pickard, would fly at rooftop height and drop special delayed fuse bombs directly onto the prison's outer walls and the guards' barracks. The bombs had to be placed with the accuracy of a surgeon's knife. Too short, and they'd miss the wall. Too long, and they'd vaporize the prison blocks. On the day, the weather was atrocious. Snow and low cloud. Many thought the mission would be scrubbed, but Pickard knew the prisoners were running out of time. "We're going," he said. The Mosquitoes took off, skimming the icy waves of the channel. They crossed the French coast, so low that witnesses said they saw the pilots' faces. They weaved through the landscape, following the narrow valleys, the roar of their merlins echoing off the hillsides, startling farmers in their fields. They reached Amiens. The lead aircraft, piloted by Pickard, made the first run. The prison loomed ahead, a stark, grim structure. They could see the guards in the yard, looking up in shock. The bomb doors opened. The navigator, concentrating furiously, called the release. The 500-pound bombs fell away, their fuses set for an 11-second delay. The Mosquito pulled up, racing over the prison roof. Then came the next wave. And the next. The bombs struck home with terrifying accuracy. The massive outer walls blew outward as planned. The guards' barracks was obliterated. The Mosquitoes made multiple passes, some so low that their wings clipped the prison telephone wires. One Mosquito was hit by flak and crashed, killing its crew. Pickard's own aircraft, having made its run, circled to assess the damage. It was then that he was jumped by Focke-Wulf 190s that had been scrambled. His Mosquito was shot down. Pickard and his navigator were killed. He was last seen giving a thumbs up from the cockpit, having seen that the main objective was achieved. And it was. The bombs had done their job. The walls were gone. Over 250 prisoners escaped, including more than 100 members of the resistance who lived to fight another day. The raid was a tactical and moral victory of immense proportions. It showed that the Allies could reach out and touch the Nazi war machine with a finger, not a fist. It was a message: nowhere is safe. Not your cities, not your night skies, and not even your prisons. Similar raids followed. The Mosquito struck the Gestapo headquarters in Copenhagen, carefully demolishing the building while sparing the school next door. They attacked the Schelles in Copenhagen, again targeting the Gestapo with similar precision. They became the long-range, pinpoint arm of the Allied war effort. For the German High Command, this was the final, intolerable humiliation. The Mosquito was no longer just a military problem. It was a direct challenge to their authority and control over occupied Europe. They could fortify a factory against a 1,000-bomber raid, but how do you stop a wooden plane that can fly down a city street and drop a bomb through your office window? The frustration boiled over into a kind of desperate fury. Luftwaffe commanders, once the proud aristocrats of the air, were now being publicly berated for their inability to stop this plywood plague. And this is where the story reaches its climax, where the legend solidifies into a concrete, documented fact. The point where the aces, the proud experten, began to refuse to fly against it. The Phantom had won. It had gotten inside their heads. And in the final part of our story, we will hear their voices, we will see the official reports, and we will understand the full, demoralizing weight of the wooden wonder. The Mosquito had become more than an aircraft. It was a specter that haunted the German war machine. It had proven itself untouchable in the high-altitude reconnaissance role, a humiliating sting over Berlin, the master of the night, and a precise scalpel against hardened targets. With each new role, the legend grew, and with the legend, a very specific and corrosive kind of fear began to seep into the bones of the Luftwaffe. This wasn't the sharp, immediate fear of combat. It was a slow-burning dread, a sense of helplessness that eroded morale from the inside out. This is the story of that final, psychological victory, the point where respect tipped over into outright refusal. We need to step into the worn leather boots of a veteran expert in late 1943, early 1944. Let's call him Oberleutnant Erich Schmidt. He's a squadron leader in a day fighter unit, JG-26. He has the Knight's Cross. His men look up to him. He's survived hundreds of sorties against Spitfires, Thunderbolts, and flying fortresses. He knows his trade. But the briefing room chatter has changed. It's no longer just about bomber formations and escort fighters. It's about the Mosquitoes. The controller's voice over the radio now has a new, tense edge when the fast moths are reported. The orders are the same: intercept and destroy. But the tone is different. It's laced with a desperation they all feel. Schmidt leads his swarm of FW-190s up, climbing hard, their engines straining. They're vectored towards a reported Mosquito raid, a small formation heading for a target in the Ruhr. They finally spot them, a group of 4 Mossies, low and fast, like sharks skimming the seabed. He gives the order to attack. They dive. But the Mosquitoes see them coming. They don't climb or try to dogfight. They just lower their noses. It's as if they're falling forward. The airspeed indicators on the 190s are pegged, but the distance between them and the wooden bombers isn't closing. It's holding, and then, impossibly, it's increasing. Schmidt feels a cold knot in his stomach. He's pushing his machine to its absolute limit, risking overstressing the airframe, and he's being left behind as if he's standing still. He fires a long, frustrated burst from his cannons, watching the shells explode far behind the retreating shapes. It's a gesture of pure futility. He returns to base, his fuel low, his spirit lower. In the debriefing, he has to explain his failure. The intelligence officer asks, "Why couldn't you catch them?" What can he say? That his superior German engineering was beaten by a plane made of wood and glue? The shame is palpable. This scene repeats itself across the Western Front. The Mosquito was creating a generation of fighter pilots who felt obsolete. Then came the official reports. We have the records. In the Bundesarchiv, there are Luftwaffe documents that explicitly detail the problem. One report from a Luftwaffe assessment in 1944 states, and I paraphrase, "The Mosquito can only be intercepted under the most favorable circumstances. Our fighter pilots are showing a distinct reluctance to engage these aircraft due to the high probability of failure and the severe impact on morale." Distinct reluctance. That's military bureaucrat speak for, they're refusing to do it. But it's the personal accounts, the diaries and the post-war interviews that tell the real story. Listen to the words of Hauptmann Johannes Steinhoff, a legendary ace with 176 victories, who later became head of the post-war German Air Force. He said, and this is a direct quote, "The Mosquito left us with a feeling of inferiority and helplessness. It was humiliating. My pilots, brave men, would sometimes simply not climb to engage them. They knew it was pointless. It was a blow to our fighting spirit from which we never truly recovered." Imagine that. A decorated combat veteran, a man who faced down the RAF and the USAF every day, admitting that his pilots would look at a Mosquito contrail high above and just let it go. They would fake radio trouble, claim they couldn't find it, or simply orbit at a lower altitude, because the act of chasing it was a guaranteed exercise in humiliation. They called the missions against the Mosquito Himmelfahrtskommando, a suicide mission, a trip to heaven. Not because the Mosquito was heavily armed, but because the chase itself, the futile, fuel-burning, soul-crushing effort to catch an uncatchable phantom, was a special kind of hell. This was the ultimate triumph of the Mosquito. It wasn't just about the planes it shot down or the bombs it dropped. Its greatest victory was in the minds of its enemies. It broke the will of the Jagdflieger. It made them doubt their machines, their training, and their own invincibility. The myth of German technological supremacy, a cornerstone of Nazi ideology, was shattered by a plane built by furniture makers. The legacy of the Wooden Wonder is a powerful testament to the power of innovation over brute force, of cleverness over arrogance. It's a story that echoes through history. The Mosquito, this underdog, this folly, proved that a brilliant idea, passionately executed, can overcome seemingly insurmountable odds. It serves as an eternal reminder. Never underestimate the quiet ones, the innovators, the ones who dare to think differently. Because sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't the heaviest steel, but the lightest wood, propelled by the fiercest will. The legend of the Mosquito only grew in the final, chaotic year of the war. It wasn't just a plane anymore. It was a symbol of Allied ingenuity, a ghost that the Luftwaffe's best could neither catch nor kill. But as the Third Reich began to crumble, its leaders, in their bunkers, grew increasingly obsessed with this wooden phantom. The Mosquito had become an intolerable insult to their pride, and they were willing to resort to increasingly desperate measures to score a victory against it. This is the story of the final, frantic chapter in the duel between the Mosquito and the Luftwaffe. It's a story that involves technological Hail Marys, specially formed elite squadrons, and a descent into near-mythical speculation. Because for the Germans, destroying a Mosquito wasn't just a tactical objective, it was about reclaiming their shattered honor. The first desperate measure was technological. The Germans threw their most advanced, secret aircraft at the problem. The Messerschmitt Me-163 Comet, a rocket-powered, tailless interceptor, was one such weapon. It was a terrifying concept, a plane that could climb to 30,000 feet in under 2 minutes, a rate of climb that is staggering even by today's standards. The theory was simple: get above the Mosquito, then make a single, screaming, unpowered dive onto it, firing its cannons in a brief, violent pass. But theory and reality rarely meet in war. We can picture the scene: a Comet pilot, jettisoning his landing gear after a volatile takeoff, climbing almost vertically, his eyes scanning the high-altitude haze for the telltale contrail of a Mosquito photo-reconnaissance plane. He spots it. He pushes the stick forward, the rocket still burning, hurtling towards the British aircraft at a closing speed of over 600 miles per hour. It's a blur. He has seconds to aim, to fire, to avoid a collision. He squeezes the trigger, and the Mosquito, sensing the attack, makes a gentle, turning descent. The Comet, now a glider with only minutes of fuel, cannot follow. It zooms past, a silent, powerless dart, while the Mosquito drones on, undisturbed. The Comet was too fast, too unstable, and had too little endurance to be a consistent threat. It was a spectacular solution that, in practice, solved nothing. Then there was the Messerschmitt Me 262, the world's first operational jet fighter. Here, finally, was a machine that could match and even exceed the Mosquito's speed. On paper, it was the ultimate Mosquito killer. And indeed, there were instances where Me 262s did manage to shoot down Mosquitoes. But these kills were rare, and they came at a cost. The jet engines of the early 262s were notoriously unreliable, with a short lifespan and a terrifying susceptibility to flameouts if the throttle was moved too quickly. The landing gear was fragile. And most importantly, by the time the 262 arrived in meaningful numbers, the skies of Germany were dominated by thousands of Allied fighters. The 262 pilots were under orders to avoid dogfights and go for the bombers. Chasing a single, elusive Mosquito was often a luxury they couldn't afford. The Luftwaffe's frustration reached its peak with the formation of special units, like Kommando Braunegg, a small, elite group of experienced pilots flying high-altitude Bf-109G-10S, specifically tasked with hunting Mosquitoes. They studied Mosquito routes. They developed new tactics, like flying in loose, wide formations to cover more sky. They tried ambushing them at their most vulnerable points. But the Mosquito always seemed to be one step ahead. Its crews were now veterans of this deadly game of cat and mouse. They changed their routes, their altitudes, their timings. The hunters were constantly hunting a ghost. And this is where the myth of the Mosquito's near invincibility was forged. Stories began to circulate, amplified by post-war accounts and a touch of legend. One such tale tells of a Mosquito pilot set upon by 2 German fighters. Instead of trying to outrun them in a straight line, he flew directly towards a known German flak battery. The German pilots, blinded by their desire for the kill, followed him right into their own anti-aircraft fire. The Mosquito, smaller and more agile, weaved through the storm of shells, while the 2 pursuing fighters were blown out of the sky by their own gunners. Whether entirely true or not, the story was told and retold in RAF mess halls. It encapsulated the spirit of the Mosquito crew: clever, audacious, and always thinking one move ahead of the enemy. The ultimate testament to the Mosquito's impact is a simple, stark statistic. Throughout the entire war, the Mosquito loss rate was the lowest of any aircraft in the RAF's operational service. For a plane that spent so much of its time deep inside the most heavily defended airspace in the world, this is an almost unbelievable figure. It wasn't invulnerable, many brave Mosquito crews were lost. But it was, by any measure, the most survivable major aircraft of the war. The Luftwaffe, for all its aces, its advanced technology, and its desperate, last-ditch efforts, never found a reliable answer to the wooden wonder. They had thrown everything they had at it: the best piston engines, radical rocket planes, the dawn of the jet age, and their most skilled pilots. And yet, the Mosquito kept flying, kept photographing, kept bombing, kept haunting them. In the end, the Phantom proved to be unkillable. Its greatest victory wasn't in the planes it shot down, but in the countless enemy aircraft, fuel, and man-hours it tied up simply by existing, a constant, maddening, and elusive reminder that the initiative had irrevocably slipped from Germany's grasp. The myth had conquered reality. The silence after the war wasn't just about peace. In design bureaus and military think tanks on both sides of the newly forming Iron Curtain, it was a time of frantic, quiet analysis. The victors and the vanquished alike tore apart captured technology, pored over intelligence reports, and conducted endless debriefings. And one question kept surfacing, a persistent echo from the war: how had a wooden aircraft so thoroughly outclassed and demoralized the best the Luftwaffe had to offer? The answer, they realized, wasn't just in the wood. It was in the philosophy. And in the years that followed, the world's superpowers would become obsessed with trying to recapture the Mosquito's ghost. This is the story of the Mosquito's impossible legacy, the planes that tried to be it, and the profound lesson they all failed to learn. Because you cannot copy a revolution by simply following a blueprint. The Americans, with their industrial might, were the first to try. They saw the Mosquito's success and issued a requirement for their own high-speed, multi-role, unarmed reconnaissance bomber. The result was the North American XB-28 Dragon. It was a beautiful, all-metal, twin-engine medium bomber, pressurized for high altitude, and on paper, it was everything the Mosquito was and more. It was faster, could fly higher, and carried a heavier bomb load. But it was also complex, expensive, and by the time it flew, the war had moved on. The U.S. Army Air Forces decided that dedicated, heavy bombers and long-range fighters were the future. The XB-28 was a technological marvel that missed its moment. It was the Mosquito concept, processed through the American machine of mass production and over-engineering, and it lost the elegant, brutal simplicity that had made the original so potent. The Soviets, ever pragmatic and ruthlessly focused on direct solutions, also took note. Their answer was the Tupolev Tu-2. While it entered service during the war, its continued development was heavily influenced by the Mosquito's performance. It was a superb aircraft, tough, fast, and versatile, a deadly platform for bombing and ground attack. But it was a sledgehammer to the Mosquito's scalpel. It was built for the harsh realities of the Eastern Front, for survivability and raw firepower. It lacked the Mosquito's ethereal, almost spiritual quality of being able to slip in and out of harm's way untouched. The Tu-2 was a workhorse. The Mosquito had been a phantom. But the most telling and most tragic attempts to emulate the Mosquito came from the nation it had humiliated, Germany. In the final, desperate years of the war, German designers, working under the constant threat of bombing and with critical material shortages, were forced to think in radical terms. The Mosquito became their dark muse. The most famous of these was the Focke-Wulf Ta-154 Mosquito. The irony of the name was surely not lost on its designers. It was a direct, conscious attempt to build a German wooden wonder, a twin-engine, wooden night fighter to counter the RAF's bombers and, they hoped, the British Mosquito itself. It used a similar construction method of wood and glue. It had a similar silhouette. On paper, it had the performance to be a deadly adversary. But the story of the Ta-154 is a story of how the Mosquito's success was a perfect storm that could not be replicated. The British had time to perfect their woodworking techniques and, crucially, their adhesives. The Germans, under the bombings, did not. The specific phenol formaldehyde resin glue they relied on, Tego film, became unavailable when the factory producing it was destroyed. A substitute glue was used, which was highly acidic. This acid reacted with the wooden components of the airframe, literally eating away at the structure from the inside. During flight tests, the wings of the Ta-154 would sometimes simply detach. The aircraft that was meant to slay the wooden ghost was killed by its own glue. It was a catastrophic failure, a perfect metaphor for the Third Reich's attempts to mimic Allied ingenuity through brute force and desperation. They could copy the form, but they could not replicate the soul. Another, even more radical German design was the Blohm & Voss Bv-155. This was a high-altitude interceptor, designed specifically to climb to the stratospheric heights where the Mosquito photoreconnaissance planes flew. It was a monstrous, complex machine with a huge wingspan and a pressurized cockpit. It was an engineering extreme, a solution born of pure frustration. But it was plagued with problems, its development was chaotic, and it never came close to operational service. It represented the opposite of the Mosquito's philosophy. Where the Mosquito was simple and elegant, the BV-155 was overcomplicated and ungainly. It was what happened when you tried to solve the problem of a ghost by building a Frankenstein's monster. The failure of these copycat projects underscores the true genius of the Mosquito. It wasn't just an aircraft. It was the physical manifestation of a culture of individual brilliance, of trusting maverick designers, of leveraging craftsmanship in the face of industrial shortage. It was a product of British muddling through, a seemingly disorganized but profoundly effective approach that valued practical solutions over ideological purity. The Mosquito's ultimate legacy, therefore, is not found in the metal of the jets that followed it. Its legacy is in the mindset it represents. It is the ultimate underdog story. It is the story of David and Goliath, retold with Merlin engines and plywood. It proved that innovation is not always about having the most resources. It's about using your resources in the smartest way possible. It proved that a perceived weakness, like a lack of metal, could be transformed into a devastating advantage. The superpowers of the post-war world built faster planes, deadlier planes, planes that could break the sound barrier and carry nuclear weapons. But they never quite managed to build another Mosquito. They could build bigger giants, but they couldn't recapture the ghost. The echo of its twin Merlin engines faded into history, not because it was obsolete, but because it was unique. A perfect, unrepeatable moment where necessity, genius, and courage converged to create something that was, and perhaps always will be, one of a kind.